Hi guys, how are you all? This is Deborah Walker, this is Food for Thought, this is on TNS Radio.com. So I've got Nick riding shotgun with me today. Hey! And so if anything goes wrong, quite frankly, it's his fault, as he knows. And and I've got a fabulous guest with me, and he's been on before, he's been on a couple of times. I can't resist him, so he always comes on because he's got fantastic information. And so we've got Dean Grimshawe on. Hello, Dean.
Hello.
Hi, Dean. Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year to you too.
And did you like my new theme tune?
I reckon that might catch on, I'm expecting that next show.
I was considering dressing in pink like Penelope Pitstop, but we have to pull the line somewhere, I think, this early in the morning. But like someone else is saying in the chat box, it's the hooded claw, indeed. Anyway, so today I've asked Dean to come on because January, everybody wants to do detoxing, they all go on diets, they got New Year's resolutions. I actually think it's kind of the wrong time to be doing all those sorts of things because it doesn't kind of fit in with my Chinese 5 elements thinking. But I thought I'd chat to Dean about fad diets, fad exercise regimes that are all pushed at this time of year. And most often, do they work, don't they work? Often I haven't even got a clue because there's so much different information that comes out there. So what should you be doing? So Dean, what should we be doing? Because let's face it, there is a lot of conflicting information that is put out at this time in the media, isn't there?
Well, absolutely. We're at a period in time when people have never had access to more information than they've got now. So theoretically, we can find out anything we want with the internet. We've got books, we've got so many authors, so many experts, but at the same time, people have never been so confused. And I got to thinking about this recently on Channel 5. Recently, there was a program on the top 50 sort of diet and exercise myths, and I was watching it, following it along, and it was just a whole hour or two on don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. If you're doing this, it's not too clever. And every time they say don't do it, you have to understand that preceding that at some point, someone's been telling us to do it. So, there's a massive push to be doing this, then it's, oh, no, don't do that. Go out running, no, don't go running. Eat certain vitamins, oh, no, don't overdo your vitamins because it's dangerous for you. Make sure you do this kind of exercise, oh, don't do that because it's dangerous. Do your sit-ups, oh, no, don't do your sit-ups because it's bad for your spine. So constantly, people don't know whether they're coming or going. So one of the main things I was hoping to achieve was really to simplify it. Take a lot of the in-depth technical knowledge out of it, because there's only so much in the end of the day that people need to know. And you can get very complicated in it. And quite often when I get into it and get excited, I just lose people. So what I've been trying to do was sort of take it down a few notches and think, well, let's just keep it extremely simple, and help people get to where they want to go. And the first thing, I find is the whole New Year's resolution is almost becoming a little bit farcical. Everybody sets out in the new year with great intentions. I have done, since as long as I can remember. But it's getting to the stage now where people are setting New Year's resolutions already knowing that by February they'll have forgotten about it. It's almost the expectation now that it isn't going to last. And it is just a New Year's Day thing. Oh, it's fantastic. It's a new year. And then you get to Monday and you think, well, actually, it don't feel that much different and nothing's really changed. So what we're hoping to do is give people some very, very simple strategies and very simple concepts to start working from, separate the wheat from the chaff, understand what will or won't help them, and get moving forwards. And again, when you break things down to simple, it doesn't always have to be as perfect as people make out. Like that, there is a perfect diet, there is a perfect training thing, there is a perfect. But at the end of the day, it's not always perfect for individuals because we've got to fit this into a heavy lifestyle. Because the other thing with training exercise regimes, they're often designed for people who have got the optimum resources to carry it through. I'm reading a lot of books at the moment, which really aimed at me when I was at university. I was single. I had control over my day, and I could make decisions on things which I can't now. For instance, like now I'm a busy working man, I'm a family man, and there's lots of resources that I don't have to recover from some of these intense training regimes, which really, if I was to do it now, would probably kill me off. Whereas on paper, is technically an absolutely amazing exercise regime. So quite often people are getting these regimes which they need a heck of a lot of behind the scenes work to achieve what it says in the brochure, if that makes sense. So in 3 months, a lot is possible, but it may not be that possible if you're juggling a full lifestyle, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's trying to get people to understand what their capabilities are, in a positive way, because I don't want to sort of say to people, well, this is unrealistic, and then people to just completely deflate. The idea is to make it so simple that it just becomes a part of your day, and then, throughout the course of 2013, you will get there. Because it comes back to the old analogy where people overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in 10. Now, the basis of New Year's resolutions, really, people don't want to... Generally, when people set New Year's resolutions, they're not really looking to change. They're just looking to hit a goal. And that's why one of the key things I've been focusing on is getting people to develop habits instead of goals to hit. Because it's the habits that ultimately change us. And it goes back to, the daily small incremental changes. Whereas people get to New Year's, they've had a bit of a gut buster session over Christmas. They might have boozed it up. They might have had a few late nights. They've done all the things, that they know they shouldn't be doing, but heck, they've had a great time, so to speak. And then they get to January the 1st and they're right, now I'm going to completely beast my body in the gym and I'm going to completely overhaul my dietary regime. Now, small incremental change works, but when you just completely explode everything and tip it on its head, potentially you can create more problems than you've solved. And that's the thing that I'm trying to kind of get across to people, to start building up these habits, building up this lifestyle so that it works. The perfect diet plan will work in the right conditions. The perfect training regime will work in the right conditions. But if you've just gone straight from a binge and you go into it head first, there's other complications that we need to be careful about. And that's hopefully what I'm hoping to share with people today.
Brilliant. I know, I get a lot of my clients, they turn up and they are completely confused about what is actually right for them. And they'll talk about lots and lots of different diets that they've followed over the years, never mind over the last few months, to lose weight and to get fit and to have the health that they're often looking for. They're truly, truly confused in this, in this kind of world due to all the information, like you say, is available. And it's almost too easily available. But for me, what people have got away from is actually understanding what is actually working for them. So like you say, often these diets, they're well-intentioned, but people tend to follow them rigidly. Like you say, they'll beast themselves from the moment that they go, right, it's going to change from today and I'm going to follow that. And they call it a regime. And that always fascinates me. And so they put themselves through the mill and changing absolutely everything with no consideration of how they're going to long-term fit it into their life. And often, for me, they don't continue it long-term. One, because it's a regime. Two, because, like you say, it's not actually the right thing for them to be doing in their lifestyle, but also they're not listening to their own bodies. So they've done a massive overhaul too quickly, and actually they can't see what actually is and isn't working, what does and doesn't feel good. So it's almost too much too soon.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree with that. And by the very nature of New Year's resolutions and the whole goal setting process, we're taught to have smart goals, with the T being time bound. So it's like, when are we going to do it by? When are we going to do it by? And quite often with people's mindset, it's almost like, well, I'm going to have to do a 12-week transformation because if I don't achieve this in 12 weeks, then I know my motivation will have already gone. So for a lot of people, it's almost like they're actually racing against their own motivation, which is partly, in my opinion, why they take on all these weird and wonderful strategies. Because they think, right, well, I'll do this weird book thing. I know everyone says it's rubbish, but if it gets me there in 12 weeks, I don't care. And that's the kind of mindset we're trying to move people away from. Setting goals, with the mindset of like, if I don't get it in that time period, then it's a lot of crap.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, and that's all I was trying to say, really. I think it's that goal-setting process. Like, goals are massively important. I know exactly what I want to achieve in the year ahead and, the years coming. And you do have to have these milestones in place so you can start working towards them. But you have to understand that it's part of a process. And quite often, when people don't think about their goals and they just pick goals, they see the goal as the end point, and there's nothing in place of where it leads to. Like, the whole point of a goal, really, is that it's a milestone en route to something else. In which case, people need to be a bit more aware of the bigger picture, where they want, what drives them, what their purpose is, and what really inspires them. However, come New Year's resolution, people just go, well, what shall I set as a goal? Well, I'll lose a bit of flab, 2 stone, 12 weeks, great. And they write it down, but they haven't really thought, well, where's that lead to? What leads afterwards? Because it's almost like in their head that loss of 2 stone is the holy grail, and all of a sudden life will be perfect in 12 weeks' time. And again, when you get so fixated on that, you forget why you're doing it, you forget the reasons for it, and quite often, really, you want to lose 2 stone maybe for your health or for your vitality or for a lifestyle that you want to live. But you get so consumed within that 12-week regime that health often goes out the window. I've seen people almost destroy their health just, to get a goal, which in the end, you have to question whether they really wanted to achieve it because of, the price they've had to pay to achieve that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I find that the focusing on goals. As a coach years ago, and when I worked, I always say when I worked, it never feels like work anymore. I used to have to be very focused on goals and that end point. And what I realised in my own life was that I was working so hard to get to that end point that I never enjoyed the journey. I really didn't enjoy what was actually happening on a moment by moment and a day by day basis. And this is where I bring my clients away from. So they may have an end goal of getting healthy and getting, the clients that I tend to work with, it's always about getting healthy and resolving a health issue. For me, it's about how can they make their journey inspiring for themselves? How can they motivate themselves? How, on a moment by moment basis on what they're doing, how can they give themselves the best possible experience in that moment, on that way to that end point as they're currently seeing it. I completely agree. It's just a milestone in what are probably potentially many lives that we lead. And for me, it is about the whole process, like you're saying, and it should unfold and it should be something that we enjoy experiencing, not that we do because we're so focused in 12 weeks, I will look like this. Actually, is that so important? What do you feel like now?
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of philosophers say that the goal is not about the end point or the destination. It's about the journey and who you became in the process. If you haven't picked up any lifestyle changes, if you haven't evolved in some way or another, then regardless of whether you hit the goal or you don't, nothing's really changed. Because you speak to the money gurus who treat money like a mindset, and they'll tell you that if you win the lottery, you get £5 million. If you haven't changed your mindset, you'll lose it. Because, your mindset gets to where your level is. So the real value is getting yourself to that level so that you are that value, that the value is you. And that's what I'm trying to get people to come on board with.
Sorry, I was going to say mindset is so important. Like I work on what you eat, drink and think, and thinking. Like people often think that when they're going to come and see me, it's all going to be about nutrition. Often they'll say, blimey, Debbie, you touch, it's only about 10%, 20% nutrition. The rest is all mindset work. And I'm like, yeah. And that's because that's the case, isn't it? If you're going to change things fundamentally forever and or one that's actually going to give you the life that you want, then basically it is predominantly for me about mindset.
100%. We are driven by our subconscious, whether we like it or whether we don't like it, and the mindset basically dictates where we end up. Because we could do a 2-hour show today and say, did you know that if you eat a whole chocolate cake every day, you'll get fat, and then people go, okay, I get that. Well, did you know if you eat just loads of cake and loads of donuts and this, you'll have problems? Did you know if you eat Coke, drink Coke, I beg your pardon, have loads of beer, loads of wine, that you'll have problems? And people will go, oh, great, I get it. But then they'll go off, in a couple of days' time, and that beer will be calling them, that chocolate cake will be in the fridge calling them. And it's not their intellectual brain capacity that's holding them back. It's their mindset. There's something stopping them from doing what they need to do.
Yeah, because they already know. From my experience, if I say to my clients, what do you think you should be eating? They will tell me.
Yeah. And that's one of the biggest things with the fitness industry, really, because people go to personal trainers and they say, I think I should move more. Oh, fantastic. That's a good idea. It's a good start, and then they say, I'd like to develop this. I'd like to develop my arms. Or what do you think you should do for that? Well, I think I should lift some weights. You think, well, very clever. Yeah. And essentially, there isn't anything rocket science to it. But each year we've still got the same challenges with the same problems where people are getting confused over something that's very simple and very basic. And this is what I'm trying to help people with. So the idea of the habits really was reminded to me by reading the Success Principles recently, which is a book by Jack Canfield.
Yeah.
And habits is one of those things that I've always known and always, but I read this thing and you know when you sort of read something and it's what you already knew, but it just reinforces it and re-embeds it. And I read it, and he basically approaches New Year's, and he doesn't set New Year's resolutions for the very reason that he thinks that people set goals that they're not really going to stick to. You know, they do his 12-week transformations, and whether they like it or not, in the back of their subconscious, they're probably planning that beer session on week 13, thinking, well, it's okay because it's outside of the 12 weeks, you know, and they know that at some point they're going to get that cake, you know, or that donut or that Coke or whatever it is that they still haven't lost that connection for, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's why it never really works to an extent long term, you know. And the real goal on January the 1st, 2013, is that over the course of this year, I get to January the 1st, 2014, and I'm a better person. I've got more value and I bring more value to the world. And for that to happen, you have to change on a deeper level. It can't just be, you can't just lose 2 stone on 2013 and get to the 1st of January 2014 and go, well, I'm obviously a much better person because I'm thinner and I'm going to, you know, and I'm going to take on the world. Like, no, other things have to change. And well, they don't have to change. I'm saying they have to change if you've got aspirations to become, you know, a more fuller life, you know, and do some of the things that we really aspire to and dream about. If you just want to go around the treadmill, then, you know, obviously that's fine. Just go around the treadmill. But a lot of people don't. You know, when you speak to people, they've got bigger aspirations, they've got bigger visions, they've got bigger dreams. And quite often, because they're so busy running on the treadmill, they just let go of the dreams. They go, well, yeah, it's not really for me anymore. I'll just pass it on to the next generation. And then they look down to their children and their grandchildren and go, well, I can't do it, but you can. And it sets the vicious cycle, because one day that grandchild is going to grow up saying to their grandchildren, well, I couldn't do it, but you can. And it just keeps going and it keeps going, because somebody at some point has got to step up and go, actually, I'm that generation. I'm going to do it. And, you know, but quite often it doesn't happen that way. You just got parents telling their kids they can do anything. Then they follow their parents and they tell their kids they can do anything. And what we're looking to do is get people to change. So what this Jack Canfield does is he actually focuses on 4 habits a year, 4 habits that will make him, you know, a more rounded, developed person. Yeah. And he spends a quarter of the year focusing on each. So theoretically, for January, February and March, it'll just be working on 1 habit every single day. And for instance, and everyone knows exactly what's holding them back. And it might be that A, they don't exercise enough, or B, they eat too much rubbish, you know, or C, it might be a mindset thing. But whatever it is, people know what it is. So for instance, his habit might be, for 20 minutes every morning, I will exercise. And that's all he's got to focus on for 3 months. So much so that he doesn't fill his brain with, well, what will I be doing for the 20 minutes? You know, if he doesn't know, he just makes it up. Because what's more important is that he sets aside 20 minutes and he does it. And that's one of the things that's a bit of a paradigm shift for some people, because unless they've got a perfect plan, people often don't start. And they go, well, I can't start because I don't know exactly what I need to be eating. Well, I can't start because I don't know exactly how to plan out a 20-minute session. And what I always say to people is, do you know how to get your heart rate up? Well, that's easy. I could just jump up and down. I could move from side to side. Well, there you go. Just do that for 20 minutes. Because what's important at the start is it's just a habit to do it. You know, and if every day you're doing these 20-minute sessions, then by default, you're going to get better at it. You know, you're going to pick up tips, you're going to pick up tricks, and in the end, that's going to be a very efficient and effective 20-minute session. But it all comes down to the fact that, are you committed to making that a part of your life? Or is it just something that you're going to punish yourself with and make yourself do until you get to your goal? Hence, after the goal, is that something that's going to vanish from your life? Probably yes. If it's just something that you're doing because you have to get to the goal, then what I'm trying to share with people is you haven't changed. Nothing's developed. Nothing shifted. You know, all you've learnt to do is beast yourself until you get somewhere and then just chill out, which effectively is what you do if you're an employee and you go to work. They just beast you until you do what you've got to do between the hours of 9 to 5, and then you go home and come and do it again. And look at most people who spend 20 years in the same job. You know, they might get a few promotions because they've been there long enough and they've picked up a few tricks, but people don't develop, because they're not supposed to. They're supposed to just do what they're told to do. And that's effectively what people are doing to themselves with goals. They're just making themselves get to an end point without changing in the process. So the real nugget and the real value is to change. So the first thing with New Year's resolutions is, again, it's not a 2013 thing. This is a lifestyle thing. This is us changing. So you've got to think of a habit that's going to drive you forwards, that by 3 months you can master it. And for instance, my one was meditation. I've always done meditation. I've always found it important. But there have been times in the last year where, life's got in the way and I've not done enough of it. Now, when I sat down and I looked at that, I thought, well, that's just ridiculous, because, life didn't get in the way. The truth is, I didn't make it an important enough habit. And it's actually very simple to put it back in. Now, what would make it complicated is if I tried to put meditation in, plus this training regime, plus that diet, plus this, then I start thinking, I've got to read a book for an hour a day. Now, if I'd have tried to do all that, on top of everything else, on top of my lifestyle, my family, then that's when things collapse. And after sort of week 2 of a transformation lasting 12 weeks, people go, I can't keep this up. It's because I've completely overwhelmed the system. Whereas at the moment, all I'm thinking is, right, for 20 minutes every day, obviously, a lot longer if possible, but if I just set myself 20 minutes, I have to do a meditation session, which is really quite easy. But, and it's something I enjoy doing, it's something I like doing, it's something I look forward to doing. However, because I hadn't made it a habit in the last year, there were days, consecutive days where I hadn't been doing it. So the key is I want to make it a habit. I want it to be something that I don't actually think about doing. It's just a part of me. It's part of my lifestyle, and it's something that I set aside time for, and it's there and it's always there. So in that case, I'm going to have to make it a habit. And that's, and that's an example of the sort of habits we should be looking at.
I love that approach, to be honest, because it's very incremental. And for me, when people look at my lifestyle and how I live it, they often feel that it's a massive jump for them to get there. And when I'm putting together plans for them, it is very much over a long, long period of time, often, to create that incremental change. Sometimes I have to work faster because of their health issues that I need to resolve. But for me, it is about just pushing in things, because what naturally happens for me is that the negative stuff just tends to fall out off the bottom of the list as the new stuff comes in and gives the feel-good factor and gives them more energy and gives them the lifestyle that they're looking for. So I love that incremental change, but it is about creating an overall lifestyle, like you say. I completely agree with that.
Well, people are kind of, I've shared this information with a lot of people, and truth be known, a lot of people just won't do it, because they'll look at the latest fad, the latest regime, the latest thing, and they'll go, yeah, but it promises me this in 12 weeks, whereas what you're saying, Dean, is in 12 weeks I've just learned to do, one habit. And their mind struggles with it, and they sit there going, no, it doesn't make any sense. I could completely transform my life in 12 weeks if I follow this new fandangle regime, but you're telling me just to learn one simple thing. And for some reason, people's mindsets really struggle with it. But where I'm coming from is we overestimate what we can do in a year and underestimate what we can do in 10. And I can virtually guarantee, because obviously it's up to them what they actually do, but if they follow it, I can pretty much guarantee that by the end of the year, they will be streets and streets and streets ahead of the person who tried to do a fast, intense regime on the 1st of January.
Doesn't Bruce Lee say something like, he doesn't fear the person who can do 10,000 different moves, he fears the person who's practiced one move 10,000 times or something like that? You'll know those quotes better than I will, I'm sure.
Well, I think you got it exactly right. He said, I don't fear the man who's done 10,000 kicks once. I fear the man who's done one kick 10,000 times. And it was all about, greasing the groove. If one person's totally mastered one area of their life, then it's much more valuable than someone who's had a taste of everything. And again, quite a lot often, this is the case with regimes. Like, some of the regimes are a bit weird and wonderful, but if you take most of them and gave it to someone and said, look, this is the only regime you'll ever do, by default, it'll probably work because they stick to it. It won't be the perfect one. It won't be the ideal one, probably. But that's the thing with life. Sometimes if you're not quite on the perfect path, but you're committed to it, you're still going to get there. That's why I think of it as, like a mountain. there's the quick route, there's the long route, there's the ludicrous route, which is going through all the dark grass. But the point is, if you're committed to getting to the top, you will always get there. It doesn't matter which route you take. It's just that you do have the opportunity to think cleverer, and you do have the opportunity to kill yourself in the process. But so you get that opportunity to think outside the box, think a bit smarter, and do the clever thing. However, quite often, and I found this in business, and it sounds like I'm being mean, but I'm not. Sometimes being intelligent holds people back because they're so busy trying to be clever and work it all out to a perfect system that the guy, like your Forrest Gumps of this world, someone said, run that way. Okay. And they start running. And before you know it, you turn around and these people are super successful. Why? Well, just because they picked a route and they kept going. And that is it. And you could sit there and dissect their lives and say, yeah, but they didn't really take the right route. They weren't really clever what they were doing. Well, maybe not, but they did it. And that's the point. They created a habit, they created a commitment, and they followed it through. So sometimes being intellectually clever about these things is holding us back. And that's the point with the training. So I like to try and break it down to simple things. Like, there are shortcuts, there are great tips, there are great tricks. And, over time I can share that with people. But the first thing is always the first thing. And you've just got to get into the habit of making these small incremental changes and being committed to the journey. I know T. Harv Eker he wrote a book on the millionaire mindset. And, he talked about the 3 stages of getting money. And I think, his first stage was you choose it. So you say, right, I choose to get money. But at that point, you still haven't got it. And he says, then you make a decision. And you say, right, I'm deciding I'm going to get money. And decision, I think the Latin, is to cut off all other opportunities. Is to kill possibility, I think, isn't it? Decision, I think, translated. So long story short, you're only left with one route if you've got a decision. So now you know the route and you're going to go for it. You've got a decision. But he said at that point, people still don't make money. And they don't make money until they get to the third one, which is, I'm committed to making money. Now, when you say I'm committed to it, there is no coming back. Because even if you've decided the route, decided the journey, you haven't committed to it yet. It's only when people commit to things, they really start to get what they want. And his book is all about money, but effectively that process relates to absolutely everything. If you're looking at fitness and health, you can choose it, you can decide to do it. So they might have made a choice in December. Do you know what? In the new year, I think I'm going to do a fitness regime. January the 1st, they get this new Fandango one through the post. They buy it on some site. $29, all the packages come through, the plans come through. So now they've made a decision, they've chosen it. But 99.9% of people still haven't committed to it. They're looking for these quick wins, this quick answer, and they think, well, the mate in the book, he's been backed up by some celebrity, so it must be great. It's the miracle cure, it's the magic pill. I'll have a bit of that. And it isn't, because the perfect training regime is only as good as the person who's committed to follow it through. So I can write someone a plan, and I know that it won't always work, not because the plan didn't work, but because the person just wasn't committed to it. They didn't really want to do it that much. So you can't make yourself want something more than you do, which is why you do the small incremental changes. Because sometimes along the way we realise that the goal wasn't actually the goal, and as we grow and develop as a person, the goals become a lot more clearer. Because the other thing I like about Eastern philosophy is in the East they don't focus on goals, because in the West we pick the goal and then we try and find the energy to achieve it. Whereas in the East, they find their energy and then the goal presents itself. So again, part of that working with yourself and developing yourself, the goals become a lot clearer, because we talked earlier about the subconscious being an extremely powerful force in dictating our lives. Quite often we're picking goals, based on mainstream media, what we think we want, and essentially, what we think we want. And if your subconscious doesn't really want it, then you're never going to achieve it. It doesn't matter how many times you write it down and make the affirmations or go through the process. It's got to be something you truly want to achieve. And, the whole 2 stone thing, there are some absolutely fantastic stories out there, but a lot of people don't really want it enough. They just think they want it, which is why when that chocolate cake comes calling, well, they might as well have a slice, because the need and the desire and the want for the chocolate cake at the moment outweighs the desire for their goal. And if the chocolate cake is more valuable to you than your goal, then of course you can have the chocolate cake. So again, it's about sort of really understanding ourselves, working with ourselves, and making it an efficient process.
And in some respects, though, you're talking about, are you willing to pay the price? Because having a level of commitment means that you are going to be very focused on achieving what you're looking to achieve in the long term. Because for me, to actually live the life that I live, I effectively have what are almost daily disciplines. Now, I don't feel like they're disciplines, but people see that the way I live it is quite strict in many ways. I don't see it like that. I see it's really free flowing and it's full of natural foods and things like that. But I don't let negative foods and negative energies to a certain extent come in, because I feel that detracts from my energy. So in effect, I'm really clear about what are daily disciplines, what I do and don't allow into my life, I think, that's because I'm really clear about my long-term purpose. But in many respects, I've been willing to pay the price of giving up the cakes, the biscuits, and all of that kind of lifestyle that people have a lot of attachment to.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the way I see it is everyone's willing to pay the price if they really understand what they want. Because I quite like using the word daily disciplines, but again, people do think, well, that's a bit strict, that's a bit over the top. But when they say that, I find it's not a daily discipline that's a problem, it's their mindset that's the problem. Because they're still coming from that place where they force themselves to do a 12-week regime. So when you implement yourself a daily discipline, they're still coming from the mindset that you've got to force yourself to do it. Now, the way I look at it is if I want to implement daily disciplines into my lifestyle, it's because I've chosen them, and it's because they're in alignment with the person I want to be and where I want to go. Therefore, it's a choice, and it's a choice that I've chosen wholeheartedly and willingly. So for me, the price, if I take my goal, for instance, of doing the 20-minute meditation daily, paying the price for me, is doing 20 minutes a day meditation paying the price? No, because it's a daily discipline that I want. It's something I've chosen, and it's something that is in alignment with where I want to go. So the actual act of doing it is actually very simple. So some people say, well, Dean, if it's so simple, how's this habit going to change you? Well, the price for me is other people's negativity. One of the things that has put me off doing these 20-minute meditations is, loved ones close to me think I'm a wacko doing it. So I've almost had to keep it like my guilty little secret that I meditate. My peer group, I wouldn't tell half of them that I meditate. And that's the price for me, and that's the things within my mindset that I have to take a shift on. I need to go, no, look, I know it's right for me. I know it's what I want to do. And the price for me is at some point someone's going to laugh at me or think that I'm a bit crazy going off and doing it. One of the things that comes up regularly for me is, how have you got time to meditate? And one of my favourite quotes is always Mahatma Gandhi. I've got a long day today. I'm going to have to meditate twice as long because I know just how powerful it is and how it's going to help me. But for instance, my wife, to her, it's a new concept, and she'll be like, well, no, 20 minutes doing the daily chores is 20 minutes. It's important to me that I get over that and I carry on doing it. So if I look at the reasons why I haven't done it daily, that is the main reason. It's because I've had to sort of exclude myself from groups and things and just go off and find 20 minutes, because sometimes in a daytime 20 minutes is not an alternative. On the flip side, there are people who waste 3 hours of their night on TV every day. There are those people, but those people probably don't have these goals. The people who have these kind of goals probably already have full lives, and that's why they're looking to develop themselves. So there is a price to pay for trying to implement these things, because something's got to give. The better we get at time management, the more we fit in. And there you go. That's my price. My price is the fact that at some point someone's going to laugh at me, and I'm just going to, take it on the chin and go, well, that's it. I can take that because I know that it's important for me, and I know where I'm going. And a lot of people can relate to that with things like dietary goals. They can relate to it with things like exercise goals. Because, for instance, there are some exercises that ain't that great, but there's a lot, they got people pressurising them, going, what do you mean no cake? One cake won't hurt. We always have cake. Cake's never been a problem for me, and it's that pressure. So quite often it's the external environment, which is the price we're paying in a lot of ways. And it's, are we willing to take that? Because if you look at it on paper, are you willing to do this? Nearly everyone can find a plan. They go, yes, and they mean it. They're being serious, but life gets in the way. So that's where the habit comes in. It stops life getting in the way. If you look at a really strict, I think, is it Muslims who pray at certain times of the day? I'm not sure. But for instance, if they was in a time when it wasn't really easy for them to pray at that moment, do you think they'd just go, oh, actually, it weren't that important, and just blow it off? Well, no, they wouldn't, because it's a habit. It's something they're committed to. It's something that is non-negotiable. Like, if they're going to pray at that time of the day and that's what they do, it doesn't matter where they are or what they're doing, they're going to do it.
I also find that people will say to me about juicing. Juicing takes forever. It takes so much out of my day, and I'm like, really? And I just see that as I don't have that same experience of doing juicing every single day, and yet they do. So I find it absolutely fascinating. But that's because I've gone past the I'm willing to pay the price for it. It's now habitual in my life, and it's just something I make time for.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, if it's important and you make time for it, then it's absolutely fine. Which is why I think it's such a great strategy of Jack Canfield's to do 4 habits a year and focus on it quarterly. Because if you imagine that, for instance, with yourself, I know that juicing is important to you. If you imagine it was a habit you never learned, and it was still one of those things that you just kind of did every time you cracked out a 12-week regime, and there was that pain and that annoyance of, oh, bloody hell, I've got to get my juicer out, you know, but then you would never have the health and vitality you've got. Whereas at the moment, it's just a part of your lifestyle. You enjoy it. You look forward to it. Like, it's who you are. The truth is, I could sex it up and sell you something that potentially could make me £1 million, but it'd make me a millionaire, but it'd make you exactly the same as what you already are. You know, and you know, maybe, you know, if people really don't want to listen, mate, and they really want to buy this rubbish, maybe it gets to the point where, you know what, have it. I'll just go and sit on Sunset Strip Boulevard raking in the money while you realise after, you know, 5 years of doing this crap that you ain't getting anywhere.
But a lot of it is, as you say, you were saying, a lot of it is about peer pressure. A lot of it is about the rituals that people have around foods and around what they're doing in the social groups. I know when I gave up drinking, you know, it's a long time ago now, that in effect, lots of people, and people now who meet me and they say, you don't want to drink? I say, no, I don't drink, just some water. And they'll say, no, have a drink. And I'm like, oh, I don't drink. And then you go through the whole, why don't you drink? And it's like, I just don't drink. And I won't even get into the conversation anymore, because for me, it's a non-starter. It's like, well, that's part of my life. You know, you get over it, because I have. So
they just don't understand that when you develop the habit and it's not part of who you are and your lifestyle, it just doesn't compute with them that maybe you don't really want it.
Yeah.
And the other thing I found as well is a lot of people are experts in this thing, you know, maybe like yourself, like the Mike Marlers, who I've learned a lot of information from. You know, they're so committed to this that it has become their lifestyle, to the point where it's basically their livelihood. They think, well, this is so important. It's a message that I just have to share. I've got to cultivate this and share it with people because it's important. So they make it their livelihood, their career, and it becomes their lifestyle. And quite often, you know, they work alone or with like-minded people and businesses that, you know, what's the word? You know, the synergistic with their offering. So they're always around like-minded people, or they're always around themselves. Now, obviously, to get to that point, you've had to put a few habits in place and you get there. A lot of people, when they're starting out, they might be working a 9 till 5 in an office, surrounded by people doing things the way they've always done it. And I do feel for these people, because that is the challenge. You know, they're basically going against the grain. Like for me, I work from home, so it'd be quite easy for me to just shut it out because I don't have to speak to them. However, if you're in an open space office with 50 people in, and you know you're the one person who's not having cake, and the other 49 people are giving you a hard time, especially in the early days when you're still forming the habit, and secretly, you know, you kind of think you want the cake, and you just try and develop the habit and think, no, actually, I'm going to cut this out. You're going to get broken down, and you've got to be a really strong person to make that shift. Which is why doing that one habit every 3 months is such a great approach, because if it's so difficult just to drop that bit of cake on that one coffee morning, then how difficult is it going to be to completely uphold your lifestyle? It's probably going to be unachievable. So yeah, you know, quite often the people who find it is really, really important, they create the lifestyle they want to fit in with where they want to go.
And And then Nick in the chat box has basically said, used to know a few people got very upset at me not having a drink with them, their problem. I've got a client and it's their family, not them. So they have no problem in changing, but it's their family who actually has the biggest issue with their dietary changes. And it's absolutely fascinating, the pressure that the family are putting on this individual to stay as they are, even though they can all see that the diet is to the detriment of this individual. And that is what absolutely fascinates me about peer pressure and about rituals around foods and rituals around exercise and things like this. There's lots of stuff that happens, and it happens because of the people that they've surrounded themselves with and are listening to or feel pressured by to continue being the same person that they're being, because it's not them that has the problem with change. It's the other individuals who feel unstabilized by the fact that this individual's then going to change and be going to become a different person.
Oh, absolutely. And if I look back into my history, I can see that at times I was that person. I was that person that was driving people to do things that, maybe weren't the right thing for them. For instance, I used to play a lot of rugby, and there was a massive drinking culture to rugby. So I've got a background of drinking a lot, as a social part of rugby. And I remember days when, someone used to come in and go, no, I really want to improve my rugby. I want to go up a few leagues. I want to up my level. I'm going to cut out the beer. I'm going to focus on my diet, all manner of rubbish, to try and convince him to come out, because it was in my best interest that he was there making me laugh on a Friday night after 10 pints. So I've been there, and I can say I've seen it from that side, and I've seen times when I probably was that person, trying to talk other people out of their higher goals. So I can definitely relate to it, and it's something that 99.9% of the population are subjected to. When we want to make changes, there's always people around us. On paper it seems ridiculous. So of course they want you to get stuck in and go, yes, only a few calories, it's only a bit of fat in it. What difference does it make? Because they want that. They want to be part of the group. Everyone wants to be accepted and part of a group, and when you're sort of making that call of actually this activity or what's going on today is not really in alignment with my goals, I'm going to change my habits, it makes them question their own. And a lot of people aren't ready for that. They don't want to question theirs. And the truth is, you haven't made them question theirs. All you're trying to do is better yourself. And what they do with their own lifestyle and their own goals and their own thought processes, really it's up to them. However, it does impact on them, so for selfish reasons, they don't want you to change because it makes them question themselves,
It's a really interesting point, actually. And I just, for me, it's about the fact that people won't listen to themselves. People won't go internally because they're not clear about their own purpose. And they're not clear and focused on it. That's why the people have such an influence on them, because if they were clear about it and they were clear about where they wanted to truly go, then they wouldn't be so influenced by other people and what other people say, because they'd be listening to their own body and their own mind.
Yeah, totally. If you've got a purpose, if you've got a direction, if you've got something that you want and you're willing to pay the price for it, then quite often decisions are very, very simple things. Anyone who finds it difficult to make a decision, ultimately it's because they don't really know where they're going. So they've been hit with a crossroads at this point in time. They haven't really got a secure endpoint. So either way could be the right way. So of course they're in a dilemma because they've got nothing more to go by with, just what's there, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're only looking at, what's in front of them at that point. If you've got a longer term endpoint, then yeah, it's a simple one. So yeah, hope that makes sense basically.
Now Vin's talking about games people play, and by Eric Byrne, I think that is by it's win-win, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. If people think that way, then yeah, but quite often, people are only thinking in terms of their own sort of emotions. So people who've read the book and understand the system, there are ways to work it. But most people haven't read the book. so you're just purely dealing with their primary emotional brain.
Everyone's saying hello to me in the chat box. Hello. And I called Vin Vinks because I put a kiss right straight after it. So Vin's got a new name. It's now called the Minx Vinks. And hi, ducks. Hello, how are you all? So, and I think we'll have a little bit of a break there, actually, because it kind of nicely breaks, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about cardio, because I want to talk to you about that most people, because they don't listen to the dashboard of their body. When a trainer comes along like yourself, often they'll put them through a regime that, in effect, then basically gets them, it gets them fitter, but actually they often feel worse for it in the short term. And it's because they're not truly listening to where they are. Now, a few years ago, I stopped doing all the cardio that I used to do, and I changed to doing more resistance work and actually predominantly walking my dog and dancing, and doing that as cardio as kind of, that's my enjoyment. And then my fitness is actually more focused around resistance. So I'd like to come back and talk about that, because, for me, it's all about individually listening to kind of the dashboard of your body. There's no one size fits all, but you're going to actually talk about why cardio, is that actually the real way to be going for you, aren't you?
Absolutely.
Right then, let's get some music on. I'm not sure what we're going to play. Let's see. Are we going to get some, I think we might have some Blondie or some Footloose. Should we have Footloose? Is someone in the chat box? So hopefully Nick will put some Footloose on now, and we'll have a bit of a break. Any responsibility for it all started with Bitchin's 80s night, I think it did, and since then it's been progressively downhill in regards to music and Footloose. It's a wonder I've not broken my ankle actually dancing around the living room and the clinic to it. Anyway, we're back with Dean Grimshawe, who's a personal trainer and performance coach, a very, very good one as well. And we're going to carry on talking about some of the myths, and because mainly we all start, our new year often with kind of New Year's resolutions, and then it really doesn't work out because, the research shows that we predominantly forget about New Year's resolutions, if not within the first 24 hours, within the first week. And most people by the end of the first month have really not actually achieved them. So just before we actually went to break, I started talking to you about the kind of the dashboard of your body and all of the cardio side of things, because for me, I realised that I was doing cardio and actually my body wasn't enjoying it anymore, and I've completely gone the other way in regards to my beliefs around cardio. Talk to me a little bit more about that, Dean.
Okay, well, cardio is a bit like carbs. You won't find two nutritionists or two personal trainers with the same philosophy on it. So which is partly why people are just so confused, because I could say pretty much anything about cardio right now, how great it is and how terrible it is, and somewhere along the line someone's heard it before and there's another trainer that agrees with it. So hopefully what I'm going to try and do today is clear a little bit of it up and sort of explain it in in ways that make sense to everyone. Now, cardio, well, let's look at training full stop first. Exercise is a stress. So the first thing you need to understand is that as soon as you put a training regime into your lifestyle, you're creating more stress in your life. Now, we need stress to change. So obviously stress challenges the comfort zone, it challenges the status quo, and as a result we have to grow. We have to deal with it, we have to develop. Now, in today's times, people's lives are extremely full on. We've got busy family lives. We've got, relationships we're having to manage. Finances is putting a lot of stress on us, and again, if people are worried about their money, physiologically that has changed you and it's put a lot of stress on your body. We're not getting as much sleep as we want because we've got to get up early to do the long commute into work, and we're working till late to try and do this and that. And so people are in very stressed situations. Now, training is only as good as the recovery that's in place. So most people are already completely stressed to the max. They've just completely wrecked their body over Christmas doing a binge. They're beard up. They're full of toxins. They're probably a bit overweight on this. They've burnt the candle at both ends. They've partied till sort of 6 o'clock in the morning for New Year's. So their body is completely, in many cases, burnt out. And they go, right, what I'm going to do now with that completely like shagged and burnt out body is I'm going to bust it through this like, insanity workout, which is 60 minutes of cardio a day, full max. And what they don't realise is they're actually half killing themselves, which is, one of my things against the whole cardio thing. So exercise of any description is only as good as the recovery process that's in place. So to grow, you challenge the comfort zone, you challenge the status quo, you hit your limits, you create stress in the body, your body recovers from that stress and it recovers stronger. If it doesn't recover from the stress, then you're still stressed. And if you still stress for a long period of time, you're actually weaker than when you first started because the stress breaks you down. Now, while your body is in a state of stress, you cannot grow positively. Now, the other side of the coin, and again, there are people out there who go, well, I don't want to do too much, I don't want to get stressed. Well, you have to have stress. It's a yin-yang thing, So the stress is a good thing if it's in balance because the stress makes you grow. It pushes you forwards. It makes you stronger, makes you fitter. It makes you, it pushes you forward in business. In all areas of your life, you get stressed with money, you get better with money, So stress is a good thing and, challenge should be encouraged. We should be challenging ourselves, but we should be doing it in the context that we're recovering from it, coming back stronger and then moving forwards. If we're not doing that, then this time next year, I'll be having conversations with people who are only dreaming about what they could do today because they spent all year killing themselves and now they can't do it. Like you get people who go to the gym and go, right, I've gone to the gym, I've lifted 100 kilos, therefore by next Christmas I want to lift 150. And they get to next Christmas and go, I can only lift 80 and it's killing me. And it is that basically that lack of recovery process. So if you want to do a full-on, high-intensity, high-volume training, and by default cardio often is quite high volume because you never hear of people doing cardio for 2 minutes. They're often on it for 45 minutes, an hour, this, that. They're really racking up the miles, racking up the hours, racking up this. If you want to do all that, it's fantastic, but you have to tell me that you're sleeping very, very well. And sadly, not a lot of people do get decent sleep. You have to be sleeping 8-10 hours a night without fail, without any broken sleep. You need to be really conscious of your nutrition because all that masses and masses of stress on your body is creating damage and free radicals. And I need to know that, you're releasing all those toxins, you're giving yourself the nutrients to rebuild that body which you're destroying. Don't get me wrong, it's possible to completely destroy your body and rebuild it stronger. But you have to have a lot of things in place. So that's basically the first thing I'm going to say. Obviously, I will expand on that as well, hopefully. But the first thing I'll say is the more intense your training regime, the more intense your recovery plans have to be. Now, if you imagine for every time you do an intense workout session, you have to have planned an intense recovery session. And most people don't really plan in recovery because they're too busy trying to find time for the workout. So if you really thrash your body, then you need to know, well, I've got a massage booked in, I've got a meditation session booked in, I've got, a gentle swim booked in. You got something, a flexibility session, I'm going to stretch it out booked in. Or, I've just got 3 hours, relaxing with my partner planned in where you're not going to talk about anything that's stressing you. If you're not planning these things in, then I'm going to tell you for free that if you work that hard, it's going to be a downside to it, and you're not really going to achieve. You're going to look at that person on the brochure that achieved that in 12 weeks, who I'll tell you now, had excellent nutrition, was sleeping brilliant, had no relationship stress, had no financial stress. They had all the optimum conditions to recover and grow from that exercise. If you don't have that, then you'll look at the 12-week picture and think, oh my God, what have I done to myself?
I find the recovery thing really interesting because, of course, people don't see exercise as stress, but of course it is stress. It is attaching a level of stress to the body and it's breaking down the body so they don't rebuild it. But what people, for me, don't often understand is that the nutrition has to be there to enable the body to rebuild itself, and the elimination of the increased acidity and increased movement needs to actually be able to happen. And most people that I see, particularly people who've started exercising and then they've been building up to, so they've gone from relatively nothing over a number of years to quite to the races and almost the weekend. I call them the weekend warriors, and they're doing marathons and things like that. And then they're sitting with me in my clinic, and I'm not a sports nutritionist, but they're sitting with me because actually they've worked with a sports nutritionist to do the nutrition, but they're saying, I feel absolutely shattered all the time. And I'm looking at them thinking, you've never allowed your body to truly recover, and because they've just been focusing on, I need to get fitter and fitter and fitter. Like you say, at some stage the body just starts to say, actually, I cannot continue performing at that level. Tim Galway for me has a really interesting perspective. I can't remember the name of his book. Originally, he was a coach, and he was a coach in golfing, and he moved over to business corporate coaching, and he shows this whole route where it's not just this constant ascending towards getting better and better and better, that actually there's plateau times where you actually with that, and then you actually you go to the next level, because without those times of recovery and assessment, you really cannot tell whether you're actually able to continue going in that direction, or whether you're even going in the right direction and doing the right things.
Yeah, absolutely. And a guy called Tim Ferriss wrote a book, The 4-Hour Body, and he does lots of experiments on himself, and again, he was confused about things, so he turned himself into a big experiment and wrote a book on it. And one of the things he talks about is the minimum effective dose. Now, you talked about someone who's deconditioned, hasn't done a lot of exercise, and they go in, they do this full-on regime. Now, you might find that they exercise for 10 minutes and they're already touching that comfort zone. So after 10 minutes of exercise, they're having an effect on their body, which is going to require recovery, it's going to require rebuilding, and it's going to basically develop them positively. Now, what you're finding, though, is this person's not stopping on 10 minutes. They're running for an hour, they're running for 90 minutes. Now, and it goes against what people think, because people think mathematically, and they think every mile I do is more calories. But what they're not realizing is it doesn't work that way if your hormones are completely out of whack. So it may be that 10 minutes exercise is your limit, and that's going to be enough for you to develop. I'm not saying that it is for everyone, but I'm just using it as an analogy. When you do the hour anyway, that 50 minutes not only was completely wasted because you get no benefit from it, but you've actually gone backwards because you've completely shagged yourself to a point that you can't recover. And this is what I'm trying to get people thinking a lot more about. So one of the things about cardio is there's an argument that if something really uplifts you, makes you feel good, and you really enjoy doing it, there's an argument that it's not a bad activity. However, a lot of people do cardio, a lot of people go running, a lot of people do all these aerobics, hating it, and they don't like it, they don't enjoy it, and they don't get any spiritual or emotional or mental benefits from it. They're just punishing themselves through these processes because that's what they know will get them to their goal. And I'm one of those trainers that says, if that's the case, I don't think it's the best thing for your goal. Therefore, don't do it. And B, why are you doing it? You know what I mean?
Well, it's really interesting what you say there, because for me, a few years ago, I did kickboxing, and I did a lot of training around the kickboxing because I had to keep fit. And at one stage, I carried on my running for a long period of time, and I went running in the fields instead of in the gym. And recently, I decided, I think it was the middle of last year, to go back to work, to actually being in a gym again. And I hated it. Within about 3 weeks, I knew I'd made completely the wrong decision. And some guys in the, like Rich in the chat box is saying that basically he goes out to exercise, and he's got a bike, and from what he lives on the edge of countryside, so he probably does a lot of walking and things like this. And Vin's talking about using his bike as well. And this is what I realised, that actually I far more enjoyed being out and experiencing exercise in a very different way than being in a box and doing almost a regimented exercise or series of exercises that I'd been told would get me fit. Now, I don't actually go to a gym anymore, and I've probably got better fitness than I've had in a long time now. I don't have fighting fitness or anything like that, but I do have a level of fitness which would probably outdo a lot of people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Obviously the first thing with getting in shape is, for me, getting the nutrition right, because a lot of people will make huge gains just by eating properly. And then, and if you're changing your eating and changing your training, I would say change your eating first, develop yourself and then implement the training in, because there's no doubt at all that training is fantastic. I advocate training, I do training, I share training, I personal train. So I'm not here to tell you not to train. What I'm here to do is to tell you to do it thinking about it and using a bit of intelligence with it. Now, a lot of personal trainers, and I can relate to things in my area, in my own life, they're not making that much money. So if you came to them and said, I've eaten too much plum duff, you give me a beasting, they're not going to sit you down for a consultation and say, actually, I don't think it's the right thing for you. They're just going to go, oh, lovely, pound notes. Yeah, I'll beast you till you keel over. It's not really an issue, if you know what I mean. So obviously, if you're asking for it, then they're going to give it to you because it's not in their interest, really. And, and there's me as a personal trainer on the radio saying this, but hopefully what I'm helping people do is become a bit more empowered and educated about when the right time is to do it, because it's important to me that people live healthy lives.
But it's also important that people enjoy it, isn't it? Because people, like you're saying, effectively you're going and doing something and they're doing it because it's something that they've been told is the right thing to do. But actually, if they sat back, they're not enjoying it. I didn't enjoy it in the end. And actually, I found that it's benefited my health. Spiritually, my energy is far, far higher now that I actually exercise in a way that actually suits me far more. And I actually get excited about it.
With me, but there's plenty of sort of science and research out in place sort of sharing this now. It creates far too much stress on the body than most people can recover from. So I don't really understand, why people would do it. Now, if people really, really, really enjoy it and they feel so fantastic afterwards, and it really uplifts them, it de-stresses them, then there's an argument for it. But it's a separate argument to like physical exercise, if that makes sense. So any time spent doing something, any time wasted doing something you enjoy is not time wasted, for instance. So if you really enjoy it, then fantastic, keep doing it. But if you don't, and you're only doing it to get healthy, then I would challenge that there's much, much better ways. And one of the reasons with cardio, one of the reasons cardio became so popular is because it's a middle intensity. So for instance, if you imagine the human being has evolved over thousands and thousands of years, and you go through the analogy, we didn't always live in houses, and sometimes we were hunter-gatherers. Well, the human body was designed to potter about all day long. So admittedly, if you've got a desk job, if you're driving your vehicle all day, it's not what the body was designed to do. The body is designed to be constantly moving. However, it's designed to constantly move at a chilled pace. You're foraging for food, you're looking out. And this was basically because, A, you had to get around to get the resources you needed, whatever your firewood, your resources, your berries, you're picking your fruits. But B, you didn't know what dangers were around. So at no point could you be huffing and puffing out of breath. Because if that saber-toothed tiger suddenly jumps out, and you're already half knackered, you've got enough problems as it is, if you know what I mean. So the idea is you're designed to potter around, but then when something happens, the body's designed to react powerfully and explosively and react fast. So some of the fittest, most dynamic bodies in the world are bodies that have been trained for power, strength, and explosive movements. If you know what I mean. And most people look at those sort of exercises and think, well, that's a bit advanced for me, it's a bit much. I'll just go for a run. Now, personally, and I get a lot of stick for saying this, but personally, I don't see running as natural at all. And again, going back to the whole analogy of, running through the jungle sort of thing, if you're running, evolutionarily, you can be knackered all the time. So if anything happens, you're already compromised. So I can't see why they would have done that, and reading through research. But also, the reason why cardio and this medium intensity has become so popular is because scientists have worked out that during that exercise, you're in what they call the fat burning zone. So during that medium intensity, which is something you can probably keep up for an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours or whatever you do if you do marathon running and you get carried away, you're in this zone where you're burning fat as the primary fuel for energy. And you're doing it at quite a rate. So people obviously go, well, if I'm burning fat, that is fantastic. I love it. I'm having some of it. And that's why people got involved. Now, personally, I think that's totally misleading, and it's confused people. And the reason it's misleading is you're burning fat for energy at the point that you're exercising. So hence, just exercise for 20 minutes. But obviously, people who are advocates of the fat burning zone will realise that, oh, but in that 20 minutes, you're primarily burning, you know, sugars and carbs and glycogen to get you going and that kind of thing. So where's Dean coming from, so to speak? Now, this is the point that I'm slowly getting around the houses, but getting to. When you do that medium intensity duration exercise, you're burning fat as a primary fuel source. However, the second you stop running, it stops. So all you've got is that mathematical number on the treadmill. It says I burnt 600 calories. Fantastic. If I eat my daily thing, I'm 600 below. Over a case of a week, I've lost a pound. And people put it into their little mathematical calculators and they go, fantastic. I'm burning up at a rate of knots. So that's all you've got is that little number. Now, if you was to do what I like to do, which
isn't it, if that's what you were trying to achieve?
Absolutely. And it's been scientifically proven in places that people doing this interval training, opposed to sort of like, you know, long duration, medium intensity training over a set period. There's been scientific studies showing, I think the interval group burnt 9 times as much fat. Now, you know, so in that sense, it's a no-brainer. The main problem with it is if you do 20 minutes intense exercise, it is hard. You know, you're going to have to put a bit of effort in. You're going to have to go for it, you know. Whereas if you start running at a medium pace and you just keep going for an hour, people delude themselves and go, well, I kept it up for an hour. It must be magic. Well, not really. You just got into a little groove and you carried on going. You didn't really train. The only thing you've got out of it is a mathematical number of how many calories you burn, which is why it's a little bit misleading, I think. Because another side of the coin is the body gets good at what it's used to doing. If your body is good at running, and there's a lot of technique in running, there's a lot of habit in running, and people actually get quite comfortable at running, which is why they like it. However, by default, because you do it regularly and you're good at it, you don't actually burn up as much energy as you think you do. However, the impact on your body and your joints is just the same. So people really are wrecking their body with running because that constant banging and jarring on the ankle, the knees, you know, the hips, it's really having its impact. Add to that the fact that most people with New Year's resolution have got a goal to lose weight and they're running. Now, you know, a few pounds extra on the body can, you know, without getting carried away, can add up to tons and tons of pressure through the joints. You know, it might just be a few pounds and a few kilos to you, but to your joints, it's a heck of a lot of stress. Like if I was to say to you that when you pick up a pencil off the floor, your head alone puts up to 200 kilos of stress on your lower back, people start to think, really? You know, because it's doing these little things, which is when the body, which is generally when people have these accidents. When people live in big weights, they've trained for it, they've prepared for it, they've got technique right, they respect the weight, they don't generally have these injuries, which is quite interesting, I find. It's normally picking a pencil up off the floor or tying their shoelaces, because they just throw themselves down and go, oh yeah, it's only my shoelaces. But what they forget is biomechanically, your head's put 200 kilos of pressure on your lower back. But most people have got no respect for that because they were just picking a pencil up off the floor. And this is the thing with running. When you keep doing something over long, monotonous periods of time, very small imperfections in technique become massive, chronic problems within the body. So I say, why take the risk?
It's really interesting, actually, because I know a few years ago, one of my friends, when I had knee injuries, and he said to me as a bit of a joke, he said, oh, you never get injured as a couch potato, and then basically injured his back really, really badly getting off the sofa, and which kind of blew that out of the water. Felt like I got my moment.
Well, I think you've had some of the similar experiences that I've had, but quite often personal trainers, I kind of get slammed for saying this, but quite often personal trainers are genetically gifted and they've excelled at sports during school, and they're fantastic at sport and they're fantastic at fitness and exercise. And they get to a certain age, they go, well, what am I going to do in my life? Well, I love exercising, and they do. They genuinely love it. I'll become a PT, and now they're working with somebody who's overweight, has never been in decent shape, and they're trying to empathise with someone from a position that they've got absolutely no experience of, because to them they're thinking, well, how did you get in that shape? I had a six-pack when I was 12, and there's no understanding of where the other person's coming from. Now, what we're often finding with these personal trainers, and, they're great individuals, but they just really, really love what they're doing to the point that they do it all the time. Yeah. You speak to personal trainers, go, well, let me tell you about, tell me about your day. And they go, well, it's fantastic. I get up in the morning, I train, do a few clients. Lunchtime, I train, I do a few clients. Then I go out in the evening, I train, and they're trying to sort of impart this wisdom onto everyone else who they're not single, they don't live on their own, they don't have low overheads because they still live with their parents, and they just can't train 3 times a day. But because it's their lifestyle and they love it and they enjoy it, they're doing it. And they're kind of sharing it with people. Now, what we're finding as well with these personal trainers is they're ripped, they've got great physiques, they're looking great, but when we go deeper into it, they are showing early signs of adrenal fatigue. It's having an effect on them. They're getting to the point where they're overtraining. Not all personal trainers, because there's some amazing personal trainers out there. So it sounds like I'm slamming the industry. I'm not doing that.
No, but that's my actual the people that come to see me. That's actually my experience, unfortunately, of what's happening.
Yeah, and when you look at it on an internal level, you're thinking actually what's happening to their body is that they're massively overtraining. They're putting a massive adrenal fatigue on the body, and the knock-on effects of that is quite astounding. Add to that there's still a lot of people who talk about eating every 3 hours, and potentially if you're having sort of carbs every 3 hours, you're en route to type 2 diabetes. The whole body is just falling apart internally. But obviously from the outside, people see this guy who trains 3 times a day or woman, they just think, wow, I want to be like that. And I'm here to say, well, trust me, you don't.
Yeah.
It's not something to aspire to. Health and fitness is something to aspire to. If you want to have a great figure, fantastic. I'm all for that. If you want, stronger heart, fantastic. I'm all for that. One of the things I'm getting really interested in at the moment is longevity. I'm in my early 30s now, but I'm getting to the point where I abused my body throughout my 20s, being that adrenaline junkie. I've been there and I've done it, and I've done, in hindsight, looking back on it, I've done some really ridiculous things. But at the time, I was really proud of myself. I was like, check me out, you know what I mean? I've just been going for 8 hours solid. I must be a machine, But now I'm looking back on it, cringing, thinking, what events did I do, or what training regimes did I do, which could potentially have given me, a long-term problem, which is still evident within my body, if you know what I mean. And I'm starting to think that way now, because when you sort of get to your 30s, you think, oh, actually, I can't rely on being young anymore and just getting away with it. Things start to take its toll. And I'm thinking about what my body's going to be like when I'm 50, 60, 70. I'm using people like Jack LaLanne as role models. I'm thinking, well, these guys, they were still doing fantastic work in their 70s because from a young age, they thought about it. They thought about the nutrition. They thought about the training that was right, and they looked after themselves. And that's the message that I want to get into and share, because it's all being well thrashing yourself to within an inch of your life to get your 6-pack when you're 25, but if by the time you're 60 you're bent over double because you've just crucified your body, then you've got problems. If your car does 40,000 miles and the tyres wear out, you go to Quick Fit, you get new tyres. If the suspension and the shock absorbers get knackered out because there's too many potholes in the road, you just go to Quick Fit and you put it in. Now with people, when your joints are all shot apart, you've just got to phone at the NHS and sort of take potluck. I'm not really all for that. I think, well, why not look after it the first time?
Yeah, I agree, and I've been there myself. Now, Rich in the chat box has said, "What do you think about the exercises like Tai Chi and Qi Gong?"
Well, personally, I actually think they're fantastic, and in many ways they're underrated. The reason being is it promotes sort of strength in the muscles, strength combined with flexibility, and also it's fantastic for all the joints and the ligaments, and the tendons. So it's definitely a long-term practice. It's something that you need to commit to and do as a steady practice. But I think if it's something that you incorporate into your training lifestyle and you keep it involved, then results speak for themselves. You've only got to look at them in the East, and they're doing some absolutely phenomenal sort of, I don't know what you call it, the systems and the katas, but the stuff they're doing well into their 80s, and the quality of life it's given people and the longevity of their body, it cannot be ignored, basically.
It is really fascinating. One of my instructors years ago. He actually taught kickboxing or taekwondo, because it was a mix, from a very different perspective than my other instructors. And he did all the breathing and getting in touch with truly your inner energy with it all. And that was a really fascinating perspective to actually start to train from, and took my training to a totally different level and in a totally different arena.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if I remember right, yin and yang was developed based on the breath, and a lot of belief systems and religions are developed on the breath. And so I think one of the things with yin and yang, it was like when you breathe in the universe. When you breathe out yourself. And at the point in the middle, you are one. So you breathe in the universe, you breathe out yourself, but at that point in the middle, you are complete and you are one, which is why there's so many practices based on the breath. And the other thing as well, working with the lungs, there's so much lung that we actually use, and the rest is obviously extra capacity for in case we need it, which is another thing I hope might be worth touching on in a minute with regard to organs and the capacity of them. But when people literally expel all of their breath, for some people who don't practice breath work, they'll be expelling stale air that has been in there for potentially very long periods of time. That's just stale air, like just stuck in your lungs. One of the weird things is there's I'm certainly no advocate of smoking, but smokers actually use their lungs a lot more than most people because they actually inhale. They actually use the capacity of their lungs. So there's like weird research things where they're actually in some ways better off. I think a completely weird fact. I think they're quite often better off when climbing Everest because when they get to the top, it's lower oxygen levels. And they're used to optimizing on lower oxygen levels because they're killing themselves with the smoke, and they actually sort of, contract and expand their lungs. So I'm certainly not advocating it, but what I'm saying is if you incorporate a bit of breath work in, you can get all that for free on top of being healthy.
It's fascinating. And the only people that obviously don't inhale are politicians, aren't they? Yeah. To talk a little bit more about the organ capacity, because you just touched on it then.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I find fascinating about cardio and this whole medium intensity thing, and it's kind of controversial, but at the same time, it cannot really be ignored. Now, if you look at running, and I use running quite a lot, and everyone thinks I'm slamming running. Look, if it makes you feel good, keep doing it. But if you're doing it purely to be healthy, then think about what I'm saying here. It has massive impact on your joints, and you got to think the body gets good at what it's used to doing. So as you're running, your body's thinking a little bit like an engineer. It's like, right, I've got this 70, 80, whatever kilos you are, I've got this bulk, and I routinely move it 5 miles. So it's thinking along the lines of how can I do this more efficiently, which is how your body adapts and grows. You wouldn't build muscle unless there was a reason for it. Your body takes in the information, thinks, right, what's the stimulation, what's required, what we're doing, right, how are we going to adapt? And that's how you develop your body. I know it's sort of spouting out the obvious, but some people, they kind of forget things on that sort of simple level. So you look at the body, it goes, right, what are we going to do? Well, the first thing it says is, well, let's reduce the bulk. So people think, well, that's fantastic because I was fat and I wanted to get rid of the fat, so that's why I'm running. So there is an element of you're going to lose weight, which everyone's excited about. And then it gets to the point where you obviously lose weight, and you're now skinny. And again, people carry on running and they carry on running. Now, one of the myths about the fact of it being in the fat burning zone is you're actually training your body to effectively and efficiently use fat for energy. And you're also training your body that on a regular basis, you're going to be required to use fat for energy. Therefore, long distance runners and regular runners and people who don't do who don't incorporate a lot of resistance and high intensity work into their regimes are generally higher percentage body fat people than other people, than, sort of strength work and resistance trainers. And you think, well, why? Well, the main reason is they're not using their muscles to their capacity. So if they're not using their muscles to the capacity, the body thinks, well, why am I keeping it? The muscle is metabolically active. I think it takes something like 50 calories a day to maintain 1 pound of muscle. Now, if it's dead weight and it's heavy and you're carrying it for no real reason, and plus you're on calorie deficit, the body thinks, well, what I can do is I can save myself 50 calories a day by getting rid of it, and B, I never use it, so it doesn't really matter. And that's kind of the knock-on effect of how it starts to affect your organs as well. So let's look at the heart, for instance. Now, the heart, we've already determined by default that if you can keep this up for 1-2 hours, it's medium intensity. You're certainly not maxing out. If you was maxing out, you wouldn't be able to do it for more than 10 minutes. So if you can do it for an hour or 2 hours, you're doing it somewhere in the middle where you're not maxing out. Now, the heart's already got rid of your muscle. No, I beg your pardon. The body's already got rid of your muscle. It's got rid of fat to a level, but it needs to keep the rest of the fat because you use it for energy. So it's constantly stocking up on fat. So that's the other thing that people don't realise. If you're doing all this long endurance stuff, your body's got to stock up on fat. It's got to keep it handy. It's got to keep it available. And on top of that, you've lost all your muscle. So the body's now thinking, how do I get more efficient? And it starts looking at your organs, and it looks at them in the sense of the organs this big, which part am I using? Which part do I need? And which part is dead weight? Now, if you look at the heart works in sort of, tidal volumes, and you've got the amount that you use just to breathe on a daily basis. You've got the amount you use on the when you sort of, do steady state exercise, and then you've got the rest of the reserve volume for emergencies. Now, if you imagine in our natural state, there'll potentially be quite a lot of emergency. We'd have to dart off from this, sprint off from that, run off for that. So it was imperative that we had this reserve available. Now, if you look at people today, and we don't have those emergencies, and we're not training in a way that triggers the requirement for that extra capacity, i.e. maximum and high intensity training, and sprinting and maxing out, then the body thinks, right, well, we've got an extra reserve here that we never use. So what we'll do is we'll shrink that capacity. So potentially, if you do a lot of endurance work, a lot of cardio work, and you're never actually sort of, maxing out the body and using that reserve, potentially the body can reduce. So even though your heart is theoretically healthy because it's regularly getting a workout, it's actually reducing in volume because the body says, well, I don't need this. It's an extreme situation. Some people are more exposed to it depending on the genetics, and also, it wouldn't happen after a week. It'd happen over sort of, years and years of this activity. But people who are just dedicated to doing that and nothing else, it is a genuine risk. So now, what was their medium intensity is getting closer and closer and closer to submaximal, because it's not medium anymore, because they're having to work that hard still, but the heart's getting smaller. So in relationship to the maximum capacity of the heart, they're actually almost doing submaximal energy, which now is not really as healthy for the heart as you think it is. Like, you're really stressing it to the max. And I've read reports of doctors who did these studies. I believe it was a Boston Marathon one year, and I think it was Dr. Al Sears who did it, but I checked it out, don't quote me on it, but I think it was Al Sears. And he basically tested people at the start of a race and at the end of a race, a marathon race, and these were people that were decent marathon runners. I think they'd had to run something like 5 marathons in the last so many years, and it was something they regularly did. And when he took it at the start, it was very normal. He took their blood samples directly at the end, just as they finished, and he found precursors in the blood to basically cardiac illnesses. So he saw sort of indicators and suggestions that their heart was in such stress and duress that potentially, if they'd just come into A&E, they may be considered as early signs of cardiac arrest. Now, to me, that doesn't sound very healthy.
That's just an astonishing piece of research, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd encourage people to look it out for themselves, not just take my word for it. But I believe it was Dr. Al Sears who did that study, and obviously he promotes his version of high-intensity interval training. But effectively, you don't need to get a special high-intensity interval training program. You just need to understand that it's short bouts of high-intensity work. Because if you do short bouts of high intensity work, especially if it's incorporating resistance, then basically you're using the maximum of your heart, so you're forcing it to grow and expand, which, on a daily basis, if when you don't need the maximum of your heart, but you've got that in reserve, of course you're going to be fitter, you're going to have more energy, you're going to have access to more oxygen, blah, blah, blah. So from a health point of view, it's fantastic. But also if you're using the muscles, then your body, hormones will go right through the roof. You're going to sort of have the growth of your muscles, which you're using, the strength you're using. And again, your body's going to raise its metabolic rate. So when you just sat around watching television, you're actually, burning more energy, burning more fat. And you'll find that people who do sprinting activities and high intensity circuit training have lower percentage body fat because they're not training their body to run on fat. if that makes sense.
Yeah.
They train their body to work, effectively and like a machine. That's how they're training it for. We're not in survival mode where we have to have layers of blubber just to get through the winter. We've got central heating now, so we can change the way we train and we can change the way we approach that, which is why in today's times, we've got the option to have six packs if we want it. Maybe in survival times it wasn't that attractive to have it, for survival reasons, and B, there's no point to it, Whereas now we've got the choice, so we can change the way, we can use the body how it's designed to work, but just use it in a different way. And that's how we get those things.
So how does that fit with hormone optimization?
Well, a lot of it, if you want to go to the simple side of it, if you overstress the body and you don't recover, your body's still in a state of stress. So when your body's in a state of stress, it's basically just managing the inflammation. Now, if you manage the inflammation, overcome it, get stronger, fantastic, then you're fine. But if you're not overcoming it, then your testosterone's down, your DHEA's down, your growth hormone's down. It'll have an impact on your insulin, your leptin, blah, 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 blah. So, but if you're doing fast, sharp, efficient training, and eating sensibly, then straight after your exercise, you're going to have like your surge in your growth hormone. So again, your body's optimized to grow and redevelop and recover. Your body's actually optimized to recover, because it's a short, sharp, intense sort of session. You haven't completely drained yourself and killed yourself. Your insulin is going to become sort of more sensitive. So again, you're going to have a lot of positive, you have massive positive effects. Lifting, relatively heavy weights for guys, it drives up their testosterone. So all of these positive things, which is basically helping you achieve your goals, even way after the event of the exercise, and when you're effectively just chilling out doing nothing. So for instance, but the key to it is short, sharp, intense, but not overdoing it, because some people go, right, well that's a fantastic workout. If I did that every morning, I'd be like Mr. T by Easter. But the truth is, if you did it every morning, you'd be dead by, well, you wouldn't, like you wouldn't be dead. That's getting carried away. But like it wouldn't be having the same effect because you wouldn't be recovering. For instance, if I was to say a real intense 20-minute session could have an impact on your metabolic rate for 48 hours. Well, the reason it's having an effect on your metabolic rate for 48 hours is because your body is taking 48 hours to get over it. Now, for instance, if it was taking 48 hours to get over it, yet within 24 hours you did it again, it doesn't take a boffin to work out that you haven't recovered. And, and you're going to start going down and down and down. So really, if people are just starting out and they want to just test it, just doing 2 or 3 sessions a week will get massive results. And the key thing is they're getting decent nutrition, they're recovering from it, and they're just not killing themselves in the process. Now, this information potentially is no good if somebody wants to be a professional athlete or a professional rugby player. They're going to have very specific designed routines based around what they want to do. But if someone's just looking to, improve their health, improve their lifestyle, then it really can be done very simply. Now, by default, as human beings, we never class ourselves as average. If I was to say this would work for the average person in the population, the weird thing is most people would just carry on reading and go, well, I'm not average. I need to know what Johnny Wilkinson did to get in the shape that he was in. I need to know what Jessica Ennis does. Everyone wants to sort of go to these top massive regimes, and they want something that's backed by someone that they're really impressed with. But the truth is, most of us don't require that. If we're just looking to have a healthy heart, healthy body, decent fat levels, then training can actually be very, very, very simple. And people might say to me, well, give me 20 minutes. What's the secret? What's the wonder exercises? What's the fantastic things we should be doing? And it'll be like, wow, press ups. Get a few dumbbells, just do some very basic stuff, do some squats, lunges, but everyone's looking for the secret. Well, there is, it doesn't have to be that complicated. You can literally do body weight stuff. Personally, I'm a fan of the kettlebell, although there is a bit of, study and technique involved in the kettlebell. I think it's worth it. But for some people that, they might not be that keen on learning new things. They might just want to get out and do some body weight stuff. Well, do you know what? It's going to work and you'll be fine.
The thing is, for me, is it has to be something that fits in alongside your lifestyle. So it's that coming back to what you were saying right at the beginning. It's that focusing on the habit, because once you can put all these things in place, but if you can't create it as a long-term habit for yourself, then basically it's just another regime that you don't enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the thing. Once you know the rules of the game, you can be extremely creative about how you play it. And bit by bit, this is what I'm hoping to drip feed into people, so people think, oh, I get it. I get the rules. So that doesn't work for me, but I know how to change the game so it fits into what I want to do. And examples of that would be, little 20-minute sessions. People go, right, I can handle that. That's fine. 2-3 times a week, that's magic. Love it. Some people might think, well, I haven't really got the time and the resources to dedicate 20 minutes, or they might not feel that they've got the space to do it. I'm aware of people who do, who work from home, and they might set themselves a very simple goal of every hour on the hour, they'll do 10 press-ups, and 10 overhead presses with dumbbells, and that's it. So they just work for an hour, get down 10 press-ups, 10 overhead press-ups, or some squats, but literally just 2 exercises, whatever it is. And over the course of the day, they've just done those reps every hour on the hour. Now, the idea is that when they do it, it's a short, sharp, intense shock, but it's over in a flash. It's not enough to get all hot and sweaty because they're still at work, sort of thing. But it's taxed their, their strength. It's taxed their heart. It's got their pulse up. Blah blah. Over the course of a few weeks, they've got results, and effectively, they haven't gone to the gym. They've just got. It can be done with body weight. Just with like squats, press ups, lunges, star jumps, burpees, if you want to get really involved. Or you could just put like a set of dumbbells and kettlebell under your desk, and just quickly do it. Again, for people who work the 9 till 5 and they're in a massive office, it's not so easy to just break out of a quick kettlebell routine. You know what I mean? So for those people, it potentially won't work. But for self-employed people work on their own. People got a bit more control. You can still have the shirt and tie on and quickly crack out a few dumbbell things. Put it back under your desk and just carry on what you were doing.
And what you're saying basically is that you don't have to train or eat like an athlete all day to actually have good health and fitness that fits alongside your lifestyle. Because that's what I feel, that when people kind of take on board new exercise at the beginning of the year, it does become almost athletic, and it's like, I will be this bodybuilder, I will be this athlete, and I will do this much stuff. And then within a matter of weeks, the gym membership has kind of fallen to one side, and they're paying it on direct debit because they're kind of trapped in the contract.
Yeah, well, again, if people was asked to ask me today, say, how much do you train? The truth is, I don't train a lot at the moment. I probably train 3 or 4 times a week, half-hour sessions at most. And the reason that is twofold. A, I've got a very busy lifestyle. But B, is I'm totally aware that I've got 2 young children in the house, and I personally don't sleep very well. Sleep is something that I tell everybody to put a massive, massive amount of focus on. Yeah. However, here I am with 2 young children that cry in the night, wake me up in the night, get me out of bed early, get me to bed late. So in my personal lifestyle, my sleep, if someone was to come to me with a diary and describe my sleep pattern, I'd tell them that you're screwed. Like, you've really got issues with your training, So I know before I've gone to the gym that if I really go for it, I'm not going to recover, because even though I'm eating very well, my sleep is very poor. So I have to be clever about how I train, So I literally go to the gym, I'm in and out, and people sort of look around thinking, God, that lazy little git, he's only just turned up and he's already buggering off. But the thing is, I'm aware that if I kill myself in the gym, I won't recover, because tonight I can't guarantee that I'll get 8 hours sleep. And for that reason, I can't commit to busting my body when I know that it's not going to recover.
And the thing for me is that sleeping is almost an underestimated pastime that people just do not attach that much significance to anymore. People go, I don't need any sleep. I go to sleep at 2-3 o'clock in the morning. And I'm almost holding my head in my hands with some people. Yep. Because it's like, do you not, it's like the whole realization that your body needs that recovery time is absolutely key for me.
Well, I speak to people all the time who, because I talk about sleep being an issue, and I've had people, really successful business people in recent times who would like to lose some weight, However, they're committed to their business and they're very proud of the fact they go to bed at 1 o'clock, get up at 5, and they maybe have a 20-minute nap in the day. And so they'll go, well, I don't know what your problem is, Dean. I only sleep for 4 hours. I only sleep for this. And if you look at some of the great thought leaders in time, I think Margaret Thatcher was one of them. She only slept 4 hours a day, and if that is your goal and that's what you want and you're prepared to pay the price, then that's fine. But the truth is, it will have an impact on your body. It's going to make you more insulin resistant, more leptin resistant. So without being unfair to these people, they are more likely to be fat.
And I find this if I'm up late chatting to people, or I've got clients who are in a different time zone, so I'm having to stay up later and work, I find that my eating increases, and naturally over that period of time, my weight just creeps up.
Yeah, well, you almost have to increase your eating to compensate for the lack of sleep.
Yeah.
But if that makes sense, because you just can't function. You can't take away the sleep and take away the calories. Something's got to give. And, one of the things I'm massively big on is hormone optimization. Again, probably too big to add in here, but your hormones are way, way, way out of whack if you're not sleeping. You're not recovering, you're not growing, you're not developing. Melatonin in your sleep is a massively powerful antioxidant. So all of these things are adding up. And if you're not shifting it, so for instance, we talked about the stresses of, your financial stress, emotional stress, your career stress, and now training stress on top of all of that. And not to amount the stresses of crap nutrition, because that puts stress on the body. So you've got all these stresses and you've got 4 hours at night to try and recover from it. It doesn't work. It doesn't take a rocket science to say it's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. However, the British way of thinking of things is, if it's not working, work harder.
Yeah.
But part of the reason people are failing is they're already working too hard.
Yeah.
However, the only thing they know is to go up a gear and work harder. Mm-hmm. So I don't train hard. I'd love to train more harder because I actually really enjoy it. I make sure I'm not an adrenaline junkie, because I do think a lot of people are adrenaline junkies in the gym, and they lead themselves to adrenal fatigue and complications of overtraining because of that. However, I do enjoy training, but I go to the gym and I purposely hold a bit back, because I've got to go as far as I can to work out and keep my body moving and develop it. However, I've got to be mindful of the fact that I've got to recover from this session. And if I don't recover from the session, then I've wasted my time and I've impaired my body.
I agree. Now, Dean, we talked about habits at the beginning. I kind of have gone all the way through this. Just give me, in a summary, 3 key habits you think would be really good to be starting off with this year.
3 key habits. Well,
on the spot.
Yeah. Well, I could think of hundreds, but if I had to narrow it down, well, we've just talked about it. So sleep. If you're not consciously thinking about getting a good night's sleep, making things available for a good night's sleep, making sure there's no lights on, LEDs flashing, your phone light's not flashing next to your head and all that sort of thing. Get yourself a really dark room and concentrate on getting sleep. If you do nothing else, you'll already massively improve your health and improve your life. On top of that, I'd say, commit to time exercising. So, start small. If it's 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it is, you don't have to do marathon sessions. But if it just becomes a habit, and even if during those sessions, they're not great training sessions at first, it doesn't matter, because the key thing is the habits of the fact that you turn up. And thirdly, I would say, personally, really, really, really become committed to optimizing your nutrition. Now, nutrition is such a complicated subject that I defy anybody to master it overnight. It just can't be done. But what I will say to people is, please, become students of it. Please make it something that's serious to you and commit to learning it, and just, pick up one thing a week, one thing a month, one thing a quarter, but just commit to it, because it's well worth it. Brilliant.
Now, Dean, how do people get in contact with you if they want to actually optimize their fitness?
Well, I'm all around. I've got my website, deangrimshaw.co.uk, Grimshaw, Grimshawe. I'm on Facebook, Dean Grimshaw Fitness. But the easiest way, probably the website, deangrimshaw.co.uk.
Brilliant. Thank you, Dean. This has been fantastic as always. You're one of my favourite guests because I have to do very little work. You do all the talking. rabbit. This is it indeed. And from what I'm getting from the chat box, yes, I will be podding this, and Nick will be onto it straight away, I'm sure, and we'll get that out either later today or tomorrow as always, Sovereignty. So thank you. So let's hope that we all get a level of fitness this year and get some great habits in place. Who's next? Guess. Let's check if he's in the house. He is in the house. It's Shazise, our very own Tesla, who I imagine will be rocking the house down. Were you here on New Year's Eve? Blimey, if you were, well, we had the bitchin in the house, who was absolutely brilliant. And then Shazise took over. And boy, did he take over and bring in the new year for the American side of things. So Shazise is next. And thank you very much for listening. I'm really pleased that you came along. We've had a cracking start to the new year. Can you imagine what the rest of it's going to be like if this has been the first show? Right then, I'll speak to you all soon, guys. Bye.